7 really bad illnesses. And guess what? The sneaky snake had given her these 7 bad illnesses. And she was all alone. She was tormented. She had a horrible life until one day Jesus came into her life. And Jesus healed Mary of these 7 illnesses. Oh, she was so happy to finally be healed of the 7 illnesses. And so she said, Jesus, I love you. I'll follow you forever. And she dedicated her life to Jesus. And she was one among the 12 that would follow Jesus for 3 years wherever he went. Well, when Jesus died on the cross, everybody scattered, all of his friends, but not Mary. Mary and Jesus' mom, another Mary, they stayed by Jesus. And they stayed with him by the cross. They were there when he died, and Mary was there when they took him off of the cross. And she was there outside of the tomb when Jesus was put in the tomb. And she stayed there all night, crying and weeping for Jesus. Well, she went home after he had been in the tomb. She couldn't stay there any longer because it was Passover, so she went home. Well, on Sunday morning, when she was able to go back, before the sun was even out, Mary rushed over to the tomb. And when she got there, she noticed that the stone had been rolled away. And guess what? An angel had rolled the stone away. And so Mary goes, and she's like, oh no, the stone is gone. Somebody's stolen my Jesus. She figured somebody had stolen the body. So she ran back to the disciples, and she told Peter and John, Peter and John, somebody has stole Jesus' body. He's not in there anymore. So Peter and John, they ran back, and they looked in, and they thought, what happened? The body is gone. And Peter actually went inside, and he saw the folded cloth that was from the head, and they were like, what happened to his body? They didn't understand because they didn't understand the word that Jesus had told them. They did not get it yet. And so they went home confused. Well, Mary, she did not go home. She stayed and she was crying and crying and crying. And she's crying, oh, Jesus, where are you? Who took your body? Because even though she thought Jesus was dead, she still wanted to be as close as she could to him. And so she looked inside, and guess what was in there? 2 angels. 2 angels. One was at his head where his head was, and one was at his feet. And you think she would be a little shocked by the angels, but all she cared about was Jesus. She was not really impressed with these angels. She wanted to know, where is my Lord? And so the angel told her, woman, why are you crying? And she goes, because somebody took my Jesus' body, and I want to go find him. She goes, can you tell me where he's at? And basically they were like, he's not here. He's risen just like he said. Well, she still didn't understand. She was so brokenhearted. She turns around and she sees a man approaching, but her eyes are so crying. That she, crying, that she sees this man come up to her. She doesn't recognize him. And all of a sudden, she said, she thinks it's a gardener. Do you know where they put Jesus' body? Do you know where he is? I'm going to go get him. I'm going to bring him and carry him. She was so concerned about Jesus. She was going to carry him all by herself. And so the gardener, who's not the gardener, it's really Jesus, he goes, Mary. Well, he says it in a very special way. When Jesus calls our name, he calls us each very specially. Mary. And she goes, nobody says my name like that except for Jesus. And she said, Rabboni, Rabboni. That means teacher in Hebrew. Rabboni, it's you. And she goes, and she starts to hug him. And he goes, Mary, Mary, you got to let me go. She was not going to let him go. She's like, Rabboni, I found you. And he goes, let me go, Mary. I've got to go to God the Father. Because, you see, Jesus had paid the price on the cross. He had shed his blood. Well, in the Bible, the blood is what heals us of all the yucky. He had to go and fulfill that with God the Father and say, God the Father, here's the blood I've shed. All the sins are now forgiven. People can now accept me into the heart. He goes, I got to go do that, but I'm coming back. You go tell my brethren, go tell the apostles and Peter that I've risen from the dead. And so guess what? Mary goes, all right. And so so she ran as fast as she could, and she goes and tells the apostles, Jesus is risen, Jesus is risen. And guess what? They were going to find out that Jesus had risen from the dead. So